The Missing Sister. A. Frank Murray Investigation. Season 2, Episode 4. 6 months is a long time to wait for someone who's never coming home. 6 months of checking your phone every time it buzzes, hoping it's the call that says they found her. 6 months of seeing her face on missing person flyers that people stop noticing after the first week. 6 months of police detectives who start sentences with, "I understand this is difficult, but," and end them with reasons why they're moving on to other cases. 6 months of knowing in your bones that something terrible happened, while everyone around you keeps suggesting maybe she just wanted a fresh start. The name's Frank Murray, and I've been a private investigator for 16 years. I've learned that the worst cases aren't always the ones with the most blood or the highest body count. Sometimes the worst cases are the ones where someone disappears and the world just moves on, where the absence of a body becomes an excuse to stop looking rather than a reason to look harder. I've found missing teenagers who ran away. I've found missing spouses who wanted to be missing. But I've also found the ones who didn't want to disappear, the ones who were erased by people who needed them gone. The hardest part of my job isn't finding the truth. It's telling families that the truth they've been dreading is real. It was a Monday afternoon, 2 weeks after Sarah had put a bullet in Jack Morrison on the Sea Duchess, when Jennifer Ross walked into Murray and Murray Investigations. The rain hammered against our office windows like it was trying to wash the city clean, a futile effort in Los Angeles, where the sins run too deep for any storm to reach. I was reviewing a background check for a potential client, the kind of boring paperwork that pays the bills between the cases that keep you up at night. Sarah was at her desk, working on her laptop, probably reviewing case files or checking in with her contacts at LAPD. Even after all these years of marriage, I still found myself watching her sometimes, marveling at how we built this partnership. She was a decorated detective who'd walked away from a promising career to work with a private investigator who couldn't follow orders if his life depended on it. It had depended on it, actually, 13 times by our count. Sarah had saved my life 13 times over the course of our marriage and partnership. I kept track. She pretended not to, but I knew she did too. The door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air and a woman who looked like she'd been carrying the weight of the world for far too long. She was mid-30s, dressed in a business casual outfit that had seen better days. Wrinkled slacks, a blouse with a small coffee stain near the collar, sensible shoes that were meant for comfort rather than style. Dark circles hung under her eyes like bruises, and her hands trembled slightly as she pushed wet hair back from her face. "Mr. Murray?" she asked, her voice tentative, like she was afraid I might turn her away. I stood, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "That's me. This is my wife and partner, Sarah Murray." Sarah looked up from her laptop, her detective instincts already engaged. I'd learned to read her expressions over the years. The slight narrowing of her eyes, the way she tilted her head just a fraction. She was already cataloging details, building a profile. The woman settled into the chair, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "My name is Jennifer Ross. We spoke on the phone Friday afternoon." I remembered. She called just as we were closing up for the weekend, her voice breaking as she asked if I could help find her missing sister. I'd told her coming Monday that we'd talk through the details in person. Some conversations can't happen over the phone. "Tell me about your sister," I said, pulling out a fresh notepad. I could have used my laptop, but I've always preferred writing notes by hand. There's something about the physical act of writing that helps me process information, see patterns. Jennifer took a shaky breath, steadying herself. Rebecca Ross. She's 28, or she was when she disappeared. She left work at the Westside Medical Center where she worked as a nurse, and she never came home. That was 6 months ago, August 15th. I made a note of the date, and the police investigated for about 2 weeks. There was bitterness in Jennifer's voice, sharp enough to cut. They decided she'd run away. Financial troubles, boyfriend problems. They said there was no evidence of foul play, so they stopped looking. I glanced at Sarah, who was already pulling something up on her computer. "I'm looking at the police report now," she said. "Detective Ramirez caught the case. He's usually thorough." "Usually," Jennifer repeated, her voice hardening. "But not this time. He didn't know Rebecca, like I did. She wouldn't just leave, not without telling me. We talked every single day, Mr. Murray, every single day since we were kids. Even when we were fighting, even when life got busy, we always talked. I've heard this before from other families of missing persons. The insistence that their loved one would never just leave, that there must be another explanation. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're in denial. The trick is figuring out which. But something about Jennifer Ross told me she wasn't in denial. There was a clarity in her eyes beneath the exhaustion, a certainty that came from knowing someone down to their bones. Tell me about the boyfriend, I said. Jennifer's jaw tightened. Marcus Chun. They'd been dating for about 8 months before she disappeared. Things were getting serious, or at least Rebecca thought so. But about a month before she vanished, she told me something was off. Marcus was being secretive, taking calls at odd hours, being evasive about where he'd been. Sarah looked up from her computer. Did she confront him about it? Yes. 2 weeks before she disappeared. He told her it was work stuff, that he was under a lot of pressure at his job. He's a financial analyst at Pemberton and Associates downtown. I wrote that down, underlining it. Financial analyst. Secretive behavior. In my experience, when someone in finance starts acting sketchy, it usually means they're doing something they shouldn't be doing with other people's money. You mentioned financial troubles. I prompted. Jennifer hesitated, and I could see the guilt in her expression, the guilt of knowing something was wrong and not pushing hard enough. Rebecca had about $30,000 in credit card debt, but she was managing it. She had a payment plan set up. It wasn't enough to make her run away. $30,000 is a lot for a nurse's salary, Sarah observed. Did it accumulate suddenly? That's what bothered me, Jennifer said, leaning forward. It happened over those 8 months she was dating Marcus. She said they'd been taking trips, going to nice restaurants. He always said he'd reimburse her, but he never did. When I asked her about it, she said he'd had some temporary cash flow problems, but he'd pay her back soon. I exchanged a look with Sarah. We'd seen this pattern before. Someone using a romantic partner to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, making promises they never intended to keep. It was a red flag the size of a billboard. Did Rebecca ever mention Marcus asking her to do anything unusual? I asked carefully. Anything that made her uncomfortable? Jennifer's face crumpled slightly. 3 weeks before she disappeared, she asked me if I thought it was normal for a boyfriend to ask you to pick up packages for him. I asked her what kind of packages, and she got defensive, said it was just work stuff, that Marcus's schedule was tight. But I could tell something was bothering her. I should have pushed harder. I should have. You did what you could, Sarah said gently. When someone doesn't want to share, you can't force them. But I could see Jennifer didn't believe that. She was carrying the weight of should-haves and could-haves, the burden every family member of a missing person carries. Tell me about the last time you talked to her, I said. Jennifer wiped at her eyes, pulling herself together. The morning she disappeared. She called me on her lunch break, around noon. She said she needed to talk to me about something important. She sounded scared, Mr. Murray, really scared. She said she'd come by my place after her shift ended at 7, but she never showed up. I wrote that down, underlining it twice. An important conversation that never happened. A woman who sounded scared who then disappeared. This was starting to smell less like a voluntary disappearance and more like something much worse. And you told the police this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Of course. Detective Ramirez said it could mean anything. That maybe whatever she wanted to talk about was why she decided to leave. Jennifer's hands clenched into fists. But that doesn't make sense. If she was planning to leave, why would she tell me she was coming over? Why would she sound scared? Sarah pulled up something else on her computer. According to the report, Rebecca's car was found 3 days later in a long-term parking lot at LAX. Her purse was in the car, but her wallet and phone were gone. Exactly, Jennifer said. The police said that proved she left voluntarily, that she took what she needed and flew somewhere. But Rebecca's passport was still in her apartment. How do you fly somewhere without a passport? Domestic flight, Sarah said, playing devil's advocate the way she always did. You don't need a passport for domestic. Rebecca had never been on a plane in her life. Jennifer countered. She was terrified of flying. She drove everywhere, even when it took hours longer. The idea that she'd suddenly overcome her phobia and fly somewhere without telling anyone? It's absurd. I made another note. Fear of flying. Passport still in apartment. Car at airport. The pieces didn't fit together the way the police had decided they did. What about her apartment? I asked. Did the police search it? They did a walkthrough, said everything looked normal. But I went through it myself afterward, and Mr. Murray, things were wrong. Little things that the police wouldn't know to look for. Like what? Jennifer pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. Her favorite necklace was missing, the one our mother gave her before she died. Rebecca wore it every day. I never saw her without it, and her laptop was gone, but the charger was still plugged in by her bed. Who takes their laptop but leave the charger? Sarah and I exchanged another look. A laptop removed but the charger left behind. That was either someone in a panic or someone staging a scene. May I see those photos? Sarah asked. Jennifer handed over her phone. While Sarah examined the images of Rebecca's apartment, I studied Jennifer. She had the hollowed-out look of someone who hadn't been sleeping well, who'd been carrying this weight for months with no relief in sight. I've learned over 16 years of doing this job that the families of missing persons live in a special kind of hell. There's no closure, no finality, just an absence that grows larger every day, filling the space where a person used to be. I'll take your case, I said. Jennifer's head snapped up, hope flooding her features. You will? Yes, but I need you to understand something. 6 months is a long time in a missing persons case. The trail is cold. If I find something the police missed, it might not be the answer you want to hear. I understand, Jennifer said quickly. I just need to know the truth, even if it's terrible, even if it's the worst thing I can imagine. I need to know what happened to my sister. I'd heard those words before, too. The truth is, people think they want the truth until they get it, until they have to live with it. But Jennifer Ross had already been living in uncertainty for 6 months. Maybe the truth, however terrible, would at least be something solid to stand on. I'll need access to Rebecca's apartment, I said. And any documentation you have, phone records, credit card statements, anything that might help us trace her movements. I have everything, Jennifer said, reaching into her purse and pulling out a thick folder. I've been keeping copies of everything. The police have the originals, but I made duplicates of it all. Smart woman. I took the folder, feeling its weight. This was 6 months of desperate investigation by a woman who refused to give up on her sister. I'll also need to talk to Marcus Chun, I continued, and anyone else who might have information about what Rebecca was doing in the weeks before she disappeared. Whatever you need, Jennifer said. I can pay you. I've been saving up. I know private investigators aren't cheap, but we'll work out a payment plan, Sarah interjected. Don't worry about that right now. After Jennifer left with a promise to email us all of Rebecca's information, Sarah turned to me. What do you think? I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city. I think Marcus Chun is a place to start. Financial analyst with secrets, girlfriend racking up debt doing favors for him, packages being picked up from unknown locations. It smells like money laundering. Or worse, Sarah added, if Rebecca figured out what he was involved in and threatened to go to the police. Then she became a liability. I turned back to face her. How soon can you get me everything on Marcus Chun? Sarah was already typing. Give me an hour. I've still got contacts at LAPD who owe me favors. What about Detective Ramirez? Think he'll cooperate? Ramirez is a good detective, just overworked. If we bring him something solid, he'll listen. But we need to have our ducks in a row first. I nodded, settling back at my desk to review the folder Jennifer had given us. Inside were meticulously organized documents, copies of Rebecca's bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, work schedules. Jennifer had done half our job for us already. The credit card statements told a story I'd seen before. Small charges at first, dinner here, a weekend trip there, then bigger ones. Hotel stays in San Francisco, Santa Barbara, San Diego, expensive restaurants. plane tickets purchased for Marcus that he'd supposedly reimburse her for, except he never did. By the time August rolled around, Rebecca was drowning in debt, making minimum payments that barely touched the principal. And according to her bank statements, she started picking up extra shifts at the hospital, working doubles and weekends, trying to dig herself out of a hole someone else had put her in. The phone records were interesting, too. In the months before her disappearance, there were regular calls to Marcus's number. But in the last 2 weeks, the pattern changed. The calls became shorter, less frequent, and there were new numbers appearing. Calls to what looked like law offices, to the hospital's HR department. Rebecca had been making plans, preparing for something. And then, on August 15th, her phone went dark. The last call she made was at 12:17 p.m. to Jennifer, the call where she said she needed to talk about something important. After that, nothing. Frank, Sarah said, pulling me from my review. You need to see this. I moved behind her desk, reading over her shoulder. Sarah had pulled up Marcus Chen's financial records, or at least what was publicly available. 3 years ago, Marcus was making a solid 6-figure salary at Pemberton & Associates, standard for a mid-level financial analyst. But 18 months ago, something changed. He started living way beyond his means. New car, new apartment in Century City, memberships at exclusive clubs. Right when he would have needed to build a lifestyle that would attract someone. I noted, exactly. But here's the interesting part. Sarah clicked to another window. 4 months before he met Rebecca, Marcus was investigated internally at Pemberton & Associates for potential securities fraud. The investigation was dropped due to lack of evidence, but 2 of his clients moved their portfolios to different firms. He was dirty, got caught, but they couldn't prove it, I said. So he cleaned up his act at work, but needed another revenue stream. And Rebecca, with her access to the hospital and her trusting nature, became useful. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest that came with every case when the picture started to come into focus. Rebecca hadn't just been a girlfriend to Marcus Chun. She'd been an asset, a tool to be used. And when she'd outlived her usefulness, or worse, when she'd become a threat, she'd disappeared. Let's go talk to Mr. Chun, I said, grabbing my jacket. Pemberton & Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower in downtown L.A., the kind of building where the lobby alone probably cost more than my annual salary. Everything was marble and chrome and carefully curated art that was supposed to impress clients into trusting you with their money. The receptionist was young and professional, with perfect makeup and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Can I help you? I pulled out my PI license. We're here to see Marcus Chun. We're investigating a missing persons case. The smile faltered. Let me check if he's available. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. Mr. Chun will see you. Conference room B, down the hall to your left. As we walked down the hallway, Sarah leaned close. He agreed to see us pretty quickly. Either he's confident he has nothing to hide, I said, or he's nervous about refusing to cooperate, or he wants to know what we know. We found Conference Room B, a glass-walled space with a view of the city sprawling to the horizon. Marcus Chun was waiting for us, and the moment I saw him, I started building a profile. Early 30s, well-groomed, expensive suit, probably $2,000 at least, confident posture, but there was something nervous about the way his eyes darted between us, the way his fingers drummed against the table. You're here about Rebecca, he said before we could introduce ourselves. Jennifer sent you, didn't she? Interesting. Not is this about Rebecca? Or what can I do for you? He already knew why we were here. We're investigating her disappearance, Sarah said, her voice neutral. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Marcus sank into a chair, and I watched his confident facade start to crack. I've already talked to the police. Multiple times. I don't know what else I can tell you. Tell us about your relationship with Rebecca, I said, settling across from him. Jennifer mentioned you've been dating about 8 months. We met at a charity event, Marcus said. She was volunteering with the hospital. I was there for work. We hit it off. She was amazing. Smart, funny, caring. I really thought we had something. But things got complicated. I prompted. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its careful styling. Look, I know what Jennifer thinks, that I was using Rebecca somehow. But it wasn't like that. Yes, I asked her to pick up some packages for me. Yes, we went on trips, and I said I'd pay her back. I fully intended to. But my finances were tied up in some investments that were taking longer to liquidate than I expected. What kind of investments? I asked. That's confidential, Marcus said quickly. Client information. I can't discuss it. Sarah leaned forward. What was in the packages Rebecca picked up for you? Marcus's jaw tightened. Documents. Legal documents for clients. Sometimes they needed to be picked up from locations I couldn't get to during business hours. Why didn't you use a courier service? I pressed. I did, usually, but some clients prefer discretion. Look, I know how this sounds, but I wasn't doing anything illegal. If I was, don't you think the police would have found something? I've interviewed hundreds of people over my career. You learn to read the tells, the micro-expressions, the defensive body language, the way someone's story changes in small ways each time they tell it. Marcus Chin was lying. Maybe not about everything, but about the packages, about the legal documents, about his intentions with Rebecca. He was lying, and he knew we knew it. Tell me about the last time you saw Rebecca. I said. Marcus's composure slipped further. The day she disappeared. We had lunch together. About noon. She seemed distracted, worried about something. I asked her what was wrong, but she said it was just work stress. We made plans to have dinner that weekend. And then she left. That was the last time I saw her. Did she mention needing to talk to her sister about something important? Sarah asked. Marcus blinked. No, she didn't mention Jennifer at all. But you knew they were close? Of course. Rebecca talked about her sister all the time. They were? He trailed off, emotion crossing his face. Real emotion, unless I was completely misreading him. They were everything to each other. After their mom died, they only had each other. I studied him carefully. Mr. Chun, do you know what happened to Rebecca? No, Marcus said, and his voice cracked. I swear I don't. When she didn't show up for our dinner date, I got worried. I went to her apartment, but she wasn't there. I called Jennifer, and she hadn't heard from her either. That's when we called the police. Did Rebecca ever express concerns about your work? Sarah asked. About the packages she was picking up, or the clients you dealt with? Marcus stood abruptly. I think I need to talk to a lawyer before I answer any more questions. I've been cooperative, but this is starting to feel like an interrogation. I stood as well, pulling out a business card. If you think of anything that might help us find Rebecca, please call. Her sister deserves answers. Marcus took the card, his hand shaking slightly. I want to find her too, despite what Jennifer thinks. I cared about Rebecca. I still do. In the elevator down, Sarah turned to me. He's lying about something. Multiple somethings. I agreed. Those weren't legal documents Rebecca was picking up, and his financial troubles weren't just tied-up investments. So what was he really doing? That's what we need to find out. Back at the office, I made coffee while Sarah pulled up everything she could find on Marcus Chun. The afternoon light was fading when she let out a low whistle. Frank, look at this. I moved behind her desk, reading over her shoulder. Sarah had Marcus's financial records pulled up, or at least the publicly available portions. 18 months ago, right when his lifestyle started exceeding his income, Marcus opened 3 new business accounts, all under different LLC names, all registered to addresses that don't exist. Shell companies. I said, gets better. I cross-referenced the addresses with known money laundering operations. 2 of the buildings have been investigated by the FBI in the past 5 years. I felt the pieces starting to connect. He was running money through fake companies, cleaning it up, then living off the proceeds. And Rebecca, with her access to the hospital. Sarah pulled up another window. I checked with contact at DA. Westside Medical Center has been on their watch list for the past year. There's been a pattern of controlled substances going missing. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger a major investigation, but enough to suggest someone on the inside is diverting drugs. The picture came into sharp focus. Marcus wasn't just a corrupt financial analyst. He was laundering money from a drug operation, and he'd used Rebecca's hospital access to steal the drugs in the first place. He recruited her, I said quietly, romanced her, got her to trust him, then slowly pulled her into his operation, picking up packages, probably from dealers or distributors, maybe even helping him access the hospital's pharmaceutical supplies. And when she figured out what she was really doing, Sarah didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. My phone rang. Jennifer Ross's name appeared on the screen. "This is Frank Murray." "Mr. Murray, I'm sorry to bother you, but I just remembered something. After Rebecca disappeared, I got a strange call. It was about 2 weeks later. A man's voice, distorted somehow, like through a voice changer. He said I should stop looking for Rebecca, that she didn't want to be found." Then he hung up. I gripped the phone tighter. "Did you tell the police?" "Yes, but by then they'd already decided she'd left voluntarily. Detective Ramirez said it was probably a prank caller who'd seen the missing person flyers I'd put up. Did the number show up on your caller ID?" "It was blocked." "I'm sorry. I should have mentioned it earlier. I've been trying to remember every detail, and things keep coming back to me." "That's okay, Jennifer. That's actually very helpful. If you remember anything else, no matter how small, please call me." After hanging up, I relayed the information to Sarah. "Someone wanted Jennifer to stop looking," she said. "Someone who knew Rebecca didn't leave voluntarily, which means someone who knows what really happened to her." I grabbed my jacket. "We need to check out Rebecca's apartment." Jennifer said she still has a key. Rebecca Ross's apartment was in Mar Vista, a modest complex where young professionals started out before they could afford something better. The kind of place with thin walls and parking always at a premium, where everyone was too busy working to really know their neighbors. Jennifer met us outside Unit 214, her face pale in the evening light. The landlord wanted to clear it out and re-rent it, but I've been paying the rent out of my savings. I couldn't bear the thought of someone else living here, not until I knew what happened. I understood. The apartment was the last place Rebecca had been, the last evidence that she'd existed, that she'd had a life here. Letting someone else move and would be like erasing her. The apartment was frozen in time. Dishes in the drying rack from the last meal she'd eaten. Mail on the counter dated mid-August. A calendar on the wall with appointments marked through the 15th. I moved through the space methodically. Sarah beside me, both of us looking for anything the police might have missed. The laptop charger, Jennifer said, pointing to the outlet by the bed. "See? Why would she take her laptop, but not the charger?" I examined the outlet, then the nightstand. Something caught my eye. Faint scratches around the drawer pull, the kind made by someone in a hurry or under stress. Over 16 years of doing this job, I've learned that people hide things in predictable places, under mattresses, in closets, taped behind pictures. But sometimes they hide things in plain sight, in places you'd only find if you knew to look. I opened the drawer carefully. Inside was the usual clutter. Old receipts, loose change, a few pens. But I ran my fingers along the bottom of the drawer, feeling for anything unusual. There, a slight irregularity in the wood. I pulled the drawer out completely. Turning it over, taped to the bottom was a small USB drive, no bigger than my thumb, secured with clear tape that had started to yellow. "Sarah," I said quietly. She came over as I carefully peeled away the USB drive. Jennifer's eyes widened. "The police missed this," Sarah said. "Or they didn't look hard enough," I replied. I held it up to the light. "Whatever's on here, Rebecca didn't want it found easily." Jennifer's hand went to her mouth. "What do you think it is?" "Evidence," I said. "Of what?" "We're about to find out." Back at the office, I plugged the USB drive into my computer while Sarah and Jennifer watched over my shoulder. The drive was encrypted, but not with anything particularly sophisticated. After a few minutes of work, I broke through. The drive contained dozens of photos, all time-stamped over 3 months before Rebecca's disappearance. My stomach tightened as I clicked through them. Packages, plain boxes, padded envelopes, sometimes larger containers. But what made my blood run cold were the locations: hospital supply closets, pharmacy backrooms, loading docks. "She was documenting everything," Sarah said softly. The photos also showed people. Marcus Chin appeared in several, always at a distance, always meeting with the same two other men. One was short and stocky with a goatee, the other tall and thin with wire-rimmed glasses. But it was the documents folder that told the real story. Rebecca had photographed shipping manifests, prescription records, and text messages she'd screenshotted from her phone. The pieces fell together with terrible clarity. Marcus Chin wasn't just laundering money. He was running a prescription drug diversion scheme, using his position at Pemberton and Associates to clean the profits, and using Rebecca's access at Westside Medical Center to steal controlled substances. Opioids primarily, but also other valuable pharmaceuticals. He'd meet with his associates, exchange the stolen drugs for cash, then filter the money through his shell companies. And Rebecca had documented all of it. She figured out, Jennifer whispered. That's what she wanted to tell me. That's why she called me that last day. I found a text file dated August 15th, the day Rebecca disappeared. It was a draft of an email she'd apparently been composing. Jennifer, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've been helping Marcus with what I thought were legitimate deliveries, but I've discovered he's been stealing drugs from a hospital. I have evidence. I'm going to confront him today and give him a chance to turn himself in. If he doesn't, I'm going to the police. I'm scared, but this is the right thing to do. If anything happens to me, take this drive to the authorities. I love you. Becca, the email was never sent. Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. She tried to do the right thing, and they killed her for it. We don't know that for certain, Sarah said gently, though her expression told me she believed the same thing. But we have enough to bring to LAPD. I said, this is evidence of a criminal enterprise. They'll have to reopen the investigation. Will they find her? Jennifer asked, her voice breaking. Will they look for her body now? I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to promise that we'd bring Rebecca home. But I'd learned over 16 years not to make promises I might not be able to keep. They'll look, I said instead, and we'll help them look. The next morning, Sarah and I met with Detective Ramirez at the Northeast Division Station. Ramirez was in his 50s, gray-haired and weary-eyed, the kind of detective who'd seen enough to make him cautious, but not enough to make him callous. He listened to our presentation with increasing concern, examining the USB drive's contents on his computer. Why did we find this? He muttered, more to himself than to us. It was well hidden, Sarah said diplomatically, and you didn't have reason to conduct a more thorough search based on what you knew at the time. Ramirez shook his head. Her sister kept saying something was wrong. I should have listened. He looked up at us. This is solid evidence of the drug diversion scheme. I'll get warrants from Marcus Chun and his associates. But finding Rebecca, that's going to be harder. We need to make Chin think we know more than we do, I said. Put pressure on him, make him nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. Or they run, Ramirez countered. Then we don't give him time to run, Sarah said. Hit him fast, hit him hard. Bring him in for questioning. Search his apartment and office simultaneously. If there's any evidence of what happened to Rebecca, we'll find it. Ramirez nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm bringing you two in as consultants on this. Murray, you stay close. If Chun breaks, I want you there. The raids went down at 6 a.m. the next morning. I wasn't present for the actual arrest. That was police work. But I met Ramirez at the station as Marcus Chin was brought in, handcuffed and shouting about lawyers and false accusations. The Marcus Chun who'd met with us in the conference room was gone, replaced by someone desperate and cornered. The interrogation room was small and airless, designed to make people uncomfortable. Marcus sat across from Ramirez, his expensive lawyer Patricia Vance beside him. Vance was a shark, the kind of defense attorney who could make evidence disappear and witnesses recant. But Ramirez had solid evidence this time, and even Vance looked concerned as he laid it out. We have documentation of your drug diversion scheme, Mr. Chun. We have photos of you meeting with known dealers. We have shipping manifests that don't match hospital records. And we have Rebecca Ross's detailed accounting of everything you made her do. Ramirez leaned forward, and I watched him behind the two-way glass as he went in for the kill. What we don't have is Rebecca. Where is she, Marcus? My client has nothing to say about that. Vance interjected smoothly. Here's what I think happened. Ramirez continued, ignoring her. Rebecca figured out what you were doing. She was going to turn you in, so you had to stop her. Maybe you didn't mean to kill her. Maybe it was an accident. Things got out of hand. If that's what happened, Marcus, now's the time to tell us. Show some remorse. It'll matter to the DA. Marcus's face was pale, his earlier bravado completely gone. I didn't kill her, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Don't say anything, Vance commanded. But Marcus was cracking. I could see it in his eyes. The desperate need to unburden himself, to make someone understand. In 16 years, I've learned that people won't confess. The weight of guilt is too heavy to carry alone. They tell themselves they won't talk, that they'll stay strong. But then the evidence piles up, the walls close in, and suddenly the only relief available is the truth. I didn't kill her, Marcus repeated, louder now. I swear I didn't, but I know who did. The room went silent. Marcus, as your attorney, I strongly advise. I'm done listening to advice. Marcus shouted, I'm done with all of this. I want a deal. Full immunity for my testimony. Ramirez glanced at the mirror, at me, though he couldn't see me. That's not something I can promise. But cooperation will be taken into account. Who killed Rebecca Ross? Marcus took a shaky breath, and I watched a man's carefully constructed life collapse in real time. His name is Victor Sokolov. He's the one who runs the operation. I was just facilitating things, moving the money, providing access through Rebecca. But when she found out, when she threatened to go to the police, I panicked. I called Victor. I thought I don't know what I thought. I was stupid. Where's Victor Sokolov now? Ramirez demanded. I don't know. He moves around. But I have numbers, addresses. I can give you everything. And Rebecca? Where is she? Marcus's face crumpled. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Victor said he'd handle it. That was his word. Handle it. 2 days after Rebecca disappeared, he sent me a text. Just coordinates. GPS coordinates. My heart sank. I knew what that meant. Where? Ramirez pressed. The Angeles National Forest. Up in the mountains. Off on the fire roads. The search team deployed at dawn. Jennifer and I weren't allowed at the actual site. It was a potential crime scene, but we waited at the staging area, drinking bad coffee from a thermos and watching the sun rise over the mountains. Sarah stayed with us, her phone pressed her ear as she talked to Ramirez, getting updates. I watched Jennifer stare at the mountains, her face blank with shock. 6 months of not knowing, of hoping against hope, and now we were hours away from confirmation of what she'd feared all along. They found something, Sarah said finally, her voice heavy. They're bringing in forensics. Jennifer made a sound halfway between a sob and a gasp. I put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her, wishing I could take this burden from her. 4 hours later, Ramirez emerged from the forest path, his face grim. He approached us slowly, the way people do when they're carrying terrible news. In 16 years, I've delivered this news too many times. There's no good way to tell someone their loved one is dead. No words that make it easier. You just have to say it and then be there while their world falls apart. We found her, Ramirez said simply. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. Jennifer collapsed, and I caught her, holding her while she cried. Her grief was a living thing, tearing its way out of her chest in ragged sobs. Sarah moved closer, her hand on Jennifer's back, offering what comfort she could. She was buried about 20 feet off the fire road. Ramirez continued quietly. Preliminary examination suggests she was killed by blunt force trauma to the head. Quick, at least. She probably didn't suffer. I knew those words were meant to be comforting. They weren't. Rebecca had suffered. Maybe not in her final moments, but in the weeks before, when she'd realized what she'd gotten involved in, when she'd gathered evidence, knowing she might be putting herself in danger, when she'd called her sister that last day, scared but determined to do the right thing. She'd suffered, and now she was gone. How long will it take to find Sokolov? I asked. We're already on it. Ramirez said. Chen gave us everything. Phone numbers, addresses, names of associates. We've got federal authorities involved now. This operation stretched across 3 states. Sokolov won't get far. I wanted to believe that. But in 16 years, I've learned that the Viktor Sokolov of the world always have escape plans, always have resources squirreled away. Still, with the full weight of law enforcement bearing down, his world was getting very small. I want to see her, Jennifer said, pulling back from me, wiping at her eyes. Can I see my sister? Ramirez shook his head gently. Not yet. She's evidence now. But when the medical examiner releases her, you'll be the first to know. I promise. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Viktor Sokolov was arrested trying to cross into Mexico at Tijuana. 2 other members of the drug diversion ring were picked up in Arizona. The scope of the operation was staggering. Over $2 million in stolen pharmaceuticals over the course of 18 months, all filtered through Marcus Chen's financial network and distributed through dealers across the Southwest. Sarah and I attended Rebecca's funeral on a gray Thursday afternoon. The church was full of people who'd loved her, fellow nurses, friends from college, neighbors who remembered her kindness. Jennifer stood at the front, delivering a eulogy that was equal parts grief and anger, love and loss. My sister was kind, Jennifer said, her voice echoing in the quiet church. She was trusting. She believed the best in people. And that's what got her killed. But I won't let her death be meaningless. I won't let people forget that she tried to do the right thing, even when it cost her everything. I thought about all the other people I'd found over the years. The ones who died doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or nothing at all except being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Rebecca had tried to do the right thing. She'd gathered evidence, planned to go to the authorities, and for that, she'd been murdered and buried in a shallow grave in the mountains. There was no redemption in that, no silver lining, just a young woman dead because she trusted the wrong person. After the service, Jennifer approached us in the parking lot. Thank you, she said. I know this isn't the ending I wanted, but it's better than not knowing. It's better than spending the rest of my life wondering. I'm sorry we couldn't bring her back to you, I said. Jennifer shook her head. You gave me the truth. That's what I asked for. That's what you promised. She paused and added, What will happen to Marcus? He's cooperating with the prosecution, Sarah said. He'll serve time, but probably not as much as he deserves. The system values information sometimes more than it values justice. I used to hate him, Jennifer said quietly, but now I just feel empty. He was weak and greedy and cowardly, and my sister paid the price for it. Viktor Sokolov pulled the trigger, or swung the weapon, or whatever he did, but Marcus loaded the gun. I didn't disagree. Back at the office that evening, I poured 2 whiskeys neat and handed one to Sarah. We stood by the window, looking out at the city lights spreading to the horizon. Somewhere out there, people were disappearing. People were making choices that would destroy lives. People were burying secrets that would eventually claw their way to the surface. And somewhere, someone was deciding whether to hire a private investigator or let those secrets stay buried. 13, Sarah said softly. I turned to her, confused. What? The count. You always keep track of how many times I've saved your life. I think it's time we started counting the other direction. What do you mean? Sarah took a sip of her whiskey. How many times have you saved me from becoming too cynical? Too hard? Every case like this. I feel myself wanting to retreat into the rules and procedures to protect myself from feeling too much. But you don't let me do that. You remind me why we do this work. So I'm starting to counter. That's 1. I smiled sadly. I'm not sure I saved anyone on this case. Rebecca's still dead. Marcus gets a reduced sentence. Sokolov will probably spend more time fighting legal battles than serving time. But Jennifer knows the truth, Sarah countered. She can grieve properly now. She can move forward. That matters, Frank. You gave her that. We gave her that. I corrected. Fair enough. Sarah raised her glass. To imperfect victories. I clinked my glass against hers. To imperfect victories. We drank in silence for a moment, and I thought about Rebecca Ross, about the last moments of her life. Had she known what was coming? Had she tried to fight? Or had Viktor Sokolov caught her by surprise, ending her life before she even knew she was in danger? I'd never know. Some questions don't have answers. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and showed me the screen. A text from Ramirez. Sokolov tried to cut a deal. Feds told him to pound sand. Looking at life without parole. That's something, at least. I said, it's more than something. It's justice. Incomplete, maybe. Slower than we'd like. But it's justice. Sarah set down her glass and turned to face me fully. You know what Rebecca's case reminded me of? Why we work so well together. Why is that? Because you're the one who believes people can be better than they are. You're the optimist, even when you pretend not to be. And I'm the one who makes sure we don't get taken advantage of while you're believing in humanity. You're the heart, I'm the spine. I thought you were the one who saved my life 13 times. 14, technically, if you count that thing with the car last month. But who's counting? Sarah grinned, then grew serious again. The point is we balance each other. Cases like this, they test that balance. But we're still standing. I pulled her into a hug. We're still standing. I agreed. My phone rang, interrupting the moment. A known number. I answered cautiously. Frank Murray. Mr. Murray, my name is David Chun. Marcus Chun is my brother. I need to hire you. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it already. What for? To prove he didn't know what Viktor Sokolov was going to do to that girl. To show that he made a mistake, but he's not a murderer. Please, Mr. Murray, you're the only one who might believe me. I looked at Sarah, who had heard enough of the conversation to understand. She shrugged slightly. The decision was mine. In 16 years, I've learned that sometimes the hardest part of this job is knowing when to say no. I'll meet with you, I said finally, but I'm not making any promises. Come by the office tomorrow at 10. After I hung up, Sarah raised an eyebrow. You know you're not going to take that case, right? I know. So why meet with him? Because maybe he needs to hear that from someone who will tell him the truth. That his brother made choices, and choices have consequences. And sometimes there's no redemption arc. Sometimes people just have to live with what they've done. Sarah kissed my cheek. That's why you're the heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Rebecca Ross, about the moment she decided to document everything, to gather evidence against the man she trusted. How terrified she must have been. How brave. I thought about Jennifer, who'd spent 6 months knowing in her bones that something was wrong, fighting against everyone who told her to let it go. I thought about Marcus Chun, weak and greedy, who'd made a phone call that sealed a woman's fate because he was more afraid of prison than of blood on his hands. And I thought about all the cases to come, the ones that would end in courtrooms and cemetery plots, the ones that would haunt me in the small hours of the morning. Sarah stirred beside me, sensing my wakefulness. You okay? She murmured. Yeah, I said, just thinking. About the case? About all of them. About whether we're making any difference. Sarah propped herself up on one elbow, her eyes catching the streetlight filtering through the curtains. We found Rebecca. We got justice for her, as much as justice exists in this world. We helped her sister find peace. That's making a difference, Frank. But it doesn't bring her back. No, Sarah agreed. It doesn't. Nothing we do will ever bring any of them back. But we make sure they're not forgotten. We make sure the truth comes out. We make sure the people who love them get answers. In a world full of unanswered questions, that's not nothing. I turned to her. When did you become the optimist? I'm not. I'm just the one who reminds you that even imperfect victories are still victories. That's my job, remember? The spine. And what's my job again? To believe we're doing the right thing. To keep us human in a job that could easily make us monsters. She kissed me softly. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow we meet with David Chun and break his heart by telling him we can't help him. It'll require rest. I smiled despite myself. I love you. I know. I love you too. Now sleep. The next morning, David Chun arrived at the office exactly at 10. He was older than Marcus, with the same sharp features but more weathered, worn down by worry. I listened to his plea for 20 minutes. How Marcus had been led astray, how he'd been manipulated by Viktor Sokolov, how he deserved a second chance. When David finally finished, I leaned forward. Mr. Chun, I appreciate you coming here, but I can't help your brother. Why not? You helped find the truth before. You could do it again. The truth, Sarah said gently, is that your brother made choices. He chose to recruit Rebecca Ross into his scheme. He chose to keep using her even when the debt she was accumulating became crushing. And when she discovered what he was really doing, he chose to call Viktor Sokolov instead of coming clean. But he didn't know what Sokolov would do. He knew enough, I said. He knew Rebecca was a threat to him. He knew Sokolov was a violent criminal. He made the call anyway. I'm sorry, Mr. Chun, but that's not someone I can help. David stood abruptly, his face flushed. So that's it? My brother's life is ruined, and you won't even try. Your brother ruined his own life, I said, not unkindly, and he took Rebecca Ross's life with it. The best thing you can do for him now is encourage him to accept responsibility for what he's done. Real responsibility, not just cooperating to reduce his sentence. After David left, slamming the door behind him, Sarah turned to me. That was hard. Yeah, I agreed, but it was right. Right doesn't always feel good. No, I said, it doesn't. The phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer Ross. Mr. Murray, I want to thank you again. The DA's office called. They're going forward with full charges against Viktor Sokolov and all his associates. They said Rebecca's evidence was crucial to building the case. In a way, she's still helping put them away. She was brave. I said, you both were. I'm starting a foundation, Jennifer continued, in Rebecca's name, for families of missing persons, to help them afford private investigators when the police stop looking. I was hoping you might serve on the board. I glanced at Sarah, who nodded. I'd be honored, I said. After the call ended, I updated the case file, marking it closed. The folder went into the cabinet with all the others. Some solved cleanly, some messy, some like Rebecca's that would never feel quite finished no matter how many people were arrested. Sarah came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. You okay? I will be, I said. I turned to face her. We did good work on this one. We did, Sarah agreed. Imperfect, but good. The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Outside, Los Angeles hummed and thrummed with life. Millions of people, each with their own stories, their own secrets, their own potential to need someone like Murray and Murray Investigations. My computer chimed with a new email. The subject line read, "Need help finding someone." I looked at Sarah, who shrugged. Might as well see what they need. I opened the email and started reading. Another case, another person who needed help, another chance to make a difference in a world that didn't always want to be helped. You ready? Sarah asked. I smiled. With you? Always. We leaned over the computer together, reading the new client's story, preparing for whatever came next. The Murray and Murray Investigation sign swung gently outside our window, catching the light. Behind us, Rebecca Ross's case file sat closed in the cabinet, a reminder that some victories were measured not in happiness restored, but in truth revealed, in justice served, however imperfectly, in families given the terrible gift of closure. The work continued. The work always continued. And Sarah and I, partners in marriage and investigation, were ready for it. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, and ring the bell. Murray and Murray Investigations continues with more complex cases, dangerous criminals, and investigations that put Frank and Sarah's lives on the line. From inheritance traps to hospital murders to drownings that weren't accidents, we solve the cases that matter. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next investigation.